Hello everyone, and welcome back to AP Bio with AP Playground. Today we're covering topic 7.6, Evidence of Evolution. So today we'll be looking at all of the evidence for evolution that includes geographical, physical, biochemical, and geological data, and we'll also be looking at molecular and morphological evidence as well. And our suggested skill is representing and describing data. 4B, describe data from a table or graph, including identifying specific data points, describing trends and patterns in the data, and describing relationships between variables. First piece of evidence here is direct observation, and that's populations continue to evolve in real time, like we can see it. For instance, within antibiotic and pesticide resistance, bacteria reproduce very quickly, so it's possible to see evolution happening in real time. For instance, resistance to antibiotics. If a person has to take antibiotics to kill certain bacteria, but doesn't complete the course of treatment and stops before it's over, then what can happen is some of the bacteria may have a mutation or gene that allows them to be resistant to the antibiotic, and so they will be the bacteria that are able to survive and reproduce, and so not all of the bacteria will be killed, and the bacteria that now makes up the population is the bacteria that is antibiotic resistant. For instance, here we have all of these bacteria, and one has this antibiotic resistance gene, so when antibiotics kill the rest, this bacteria will be able to reproduce, and now the entire population is full of antibiotic resistance bacteria. Same thing with insects and pesticides. There may be an insect that is able to resist the pesticide, and so will survive and reproduce, and now the population will be full of pesticide resistant insects. We also have responses to invasive species, and so we can see evolution happening all around us in real time through direct observation. Another evidence for evolution is homology. Homology is similarity from common ancestry. And we're talking here about homologous structures, which are anatomical signs of evolution, the same body part being used for different functions, such as a forelimb. And so when we look at a common ancestor and then we look at today, we can see that evolution has occurred because from that common ancestor, there are lots of species that share the same exact body part, but they use it for different functions because they're different species. So the forelimb is my example here, and we can see within human arms, we can see it within dog legs, we can see it within bird wings, even with whale fins, we can see that there is a forelimb bone, and that's suggestive of not only common ancestry, but the fact that there has been change over time from common ancestry. There are also embryonic homologies, which are anatomical structures in embryos that all or many species share, such as all vertebrae, so all creatures with backbones, all of those embryos have a postanal tail and pharyngeal pouches. And so we can see that there's been evolution from a common ancestor. So starting from a common ancestor, different species have evolved. There's been change over time. So even though there are all these species now, they all share similar structures due to homology. There's also vestigial organs that don't have a function now but used to serve a function in our ancestors, such as the appendix. The appendix doesn't actually play an important role within the human body anymore, but because of evolution over time, it has lost its purpose. And then we also have molecular homologies, shared molecular characteristics, such as the same genetic language and similarities in genetic sequences across all species. And this is all evidence for evolution based on similarity from common ancestry. And we can also talk about convergent evolution, which is not due to common ancestry, but two species developing similarities over time because they live within the same environment. So they're adapting to a new environment, and they're becoming similar because even though they're different species, they are both adapting to the same environment in the same way. So they're developing analogous structures that all have the same function, even if there's low genetic similarity or the form and structure is different, such as penguins, dolphins, and sharks all having torpedo shapes, even though they're different species, but they all have to swim and dive within water. Also, bats, birds, and butterflies, they all have to fly, and so they've developed this function to adapt in a new environment, and this is a similarity not specifically because of genetics, but because of the environmental pressures that have caused evolution. And so when we look at these 4 different species and we're trying to figure out which one represents homology and analogy, let's look at species A. Genetic similarity is low. So it cannot be homology because homology comes from genetic similarity, and we're looking at common ancestry. And if the function is the same and the form and structure is different, then yes, option A, this is analogy. So option B is not going to be analogy because the function is different, and it's not going to be homology because genetic similarity is low. Now, if genetic similarity is high, that means that we could be looking at homology. But now let's take a look. Just like we looked at our forelimbs, we can see that the structure is going to be the same for all of these species, even though they use them for different things. For instance, birds use their wings to fly, whales use their fins to swim, and humans use their hands to grab things. So the form and structure is the same, but the function is different, and genetic similarity is high. This is homology right over here. The fossil record also provides evidence for evolution, and fossils are remains or traces of organisms from the past. And they're located in strata, which are layers of rock. And the older fossils are going to be deeper because new materials are going to be piling on top of them, and new fossils with that. And the fossil record is the collection of fossils found throughout the world arranged in chronological order. So we can see changes in fossils over time through the fossil record. And so they link ancient organisms to modern species, and following extinctions we can see new species appearing in rock above others. And so when we look over here, we have fossils of molar teeth, we have fossils of forefeet, and from these fossils we can gain an understanding of the structure of species and organisms from long ago moving closer to modern day. And so we can see the evolution of horses over here through these fossils by constructing what that organism could have looked like based on the fossils that we found. And we can see change over time. There is evolution, and the fossil record gives evidence for that. Evolution, there's also evidence for it through biogeography, which is the geographic distribution of species. And species in a geographic area are more closely related to each other than to species in a distant area. So meaning that desert animals in one area are going to be more closely related to local species than desert animals on another continent. So even though the environment is the same, they're still going to be more closely related to the species around them. And continental drift is another example of biogeography. So continental drift is the idea that continents are very, very slowly moving apart from each other, and it can explain the similarity of species on different continents. And this really started from the breakup of Pangaea, which was one supercontinent, which eventually broke up into the 7 continents that we have today. But this can explain the similarity of species on different continents because those continents could have actually been located very close to each other at one point in time. Lastly, we have endemic species, which are species that are found in a certain area and nowhere else, such as ring-tailed lemurs, which are only found on the island of Madagascar. And so this shows that there has been change over time in those areas in order for these species to adapt to their environment. So there you have it. That's evidence for evolution. Direct observation, the fossil record, homology and homologous and analogous structures, and lastly biogeography. That's evidence for evolution right there. And we'll see you in topic 7.7 to discuss common ancestry.